This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. A sacred fire is burning in Memorial Park for a toddler whose remains were found this past summer in a barn in the Interlake. Xavia Butler's death is being investigated by the RCMP as a homicide. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, the toddler's caregiver wants to know why Xavia was taken away from her.
Drumming around a sacred fire to remember Xavia Butler. Natalie Anderson was her caregiver from the time Xavia was born until she was nearly 9 months old. March 2022 was the last time she saw Xavia before she says Child and Family Services got involved and Xavia went to live with her biological family.
And I told her that she was going for a car ride and Mommy would be waiting for her. They had no right to take her.
Xavia's remains were found this past June in this barn off Highway 6 in the RM of Grahamdale. It has since been painted orange in her honor. On November 1st, RCMP confirmed the remains belong to the toddler. Her death is being investigated as a homicide.
I want justice for her. I want her name known.
Her name needs to be known.
I want her face known. I want her story known. I want change.
Anderson says she had a written agreement with Xavia's biological mom that transferred parental rights to Anderson the day after Xavia was born. Anderson gave CBC News a copy which shows signatures from both women and a nurse. Anderson wants to know why Xavia was taken from her care despite the agreement she had with the baby's biological mother. Child and Family Services isn't commenting. A provincial spokesperson says the department can't confirm any details because it can't discuss records of a specific child in care. The RCMP previously said Xavia was not in CFS care at the time of her death, but wouldn't confirm whether there was any involvement before she died. Nadine Bone is Anderson's mother figure and helped care for Xavia. Bone says she loved stuffed animals, and they brought some to put on the steps of the Legislative Building.
Now that we see her and that we miss her, and we'll never forget about her, and that we're here to the end to help her. And to help her find her way home.
The RCMP says the investigation is ongoing and detectives have been in contact with Xavia's biological mother. The sacred fire for Xavia will burn over the course of 4 days. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Each and every aspect cornered, covered exactly as they required us to cover.
Zachariah Shoaib owns Bison Towing. He built this compound on Hyde Avenue in the hope of winning a lucrative contract with Winnipeg Police. But despite submitting the lowest bid, the contract went to another company. Now, Winnipeg Police have launched a review of their towing contracts.
There have been gaps in their contract administration process. The fact is that if I didn't bid on this contract, those gaps were never going to get covered. This is alarming.
The city received 3 bids on the contract: $113,600 from Dr. Hook, $18,500 from Tartan Towing, and $14.70 from Bison Towing. The city awarded the contract to Tartan. That's the same company the city sued last year over accusations that it billed the city for tows that never happened. A police spokesperson told CBC News they launched an internal review after Councillor Janice Lukes raised concerns about the contract back in August. They have since found gaps in their contract administration procedures and are looking into whether towing records were properly kept. Lukes says past contracts clearly stated the amount of work involved and procedures for tracking that work. Information the city needs to make sure it's getting paid what it's owed from Tartan. Those tracking requirements and detailed work expectations were taken out of subsequent contracts.
I'm glad that the police are looking at it, but I truly believe that a third independent party needs to look at it. Contracts need to be written so that everyone can bid on them. They need to be fair, open, transparent, and these ones aren't.
Shoaib agrees with the call for an external review.
I want RCMP to investigate this. A deep dive, a forensic audit on all this.
The contract gave the city the option of 4 one-year extensions, but a city spokesperson says it will repost the contract next year and clarify the quantity and descriptions of the towing services included. A separate towing contract for the Winnipeg Parking Authority was also rescinded and will be reposted. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Special ceremonies were held today across Manitoba honoring Indigenous Veterans Day. Those in attendance say it's a chance to honor the bravery of Indigenous soldiers and their ongoing fights for freedom. CBC's Chelsea Kemp has the story.
Frank Tashin shares stories of his father's time in the military. Tashin says the Second World War left his father wounded. He never fully healed because he was also hurt by residential school. Tashin says his dad never got to fully experience the freedom he fought for.
But we're lucky we're here because of our veterans, Indigenous veterans who fought for this country. And you know what? We're still fighting. We're still fighting for that freedom. But in my lifetime, I don't know if I'll see it, that freedom within this, we'll keep praying.
Karen Beauchamp says the stories of Indigenous veterans can't be forgotten. It hurts knowing her uncle and cousin served in the military, but were not always given the respect they deserve. She's glad their stories are being remembered.
It's an honor for everybody. And I'm very thankful that people think like that now because we almost forgot those things, but it's coming back and I'm very proud of them.
Veteran Linda Johnston says they served despite not having the same rights and freedoms as their fellow Canadians.
The sacrifice that, in particular, our Indigenous service members endured is not anywhere comparable to my experience as a white service member. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge that.
In Winnipeg, Winston Wetney gathered with hundreds of others at the Niganun Centre to honor the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis members who stepped up.
Because we didn't have to fight. King George says you do not have to fight. This is not your battle. Take 2 steps forward if you don't want to fight. Not one Indian took 2 steps forward. And it's good they did. Maybe we would be speaking German today if they hadn't have.
Premier Wab Kinew said he visited France for the 80th anniversary of D-Day celebrations, visiting the headstones of people from First Nations and Métis communities.
When you think about First Nations people at that time didn't have the right to vote. And so people were there fighting for democracy, even though they had to come back here and work towards getting that right here in our homeland.
Tashin says he's glad to see these stories being remembered. He says people can learn from them and help heal the wounds of war. Chelsea Kemp, CBC News, Brandon.
The newly elected chief of Poplar River First Nation passed away on Saturday from a medical issue, just days after being elected. Chief Tanya Bittern is being remembered for her leadership and work with families. She was set to officially take office on November 4th. Previously a councillor, Bittern also directed the Head Start program, which supports parents and young children. Vera Mitchell, former chief and mentor to Bittern, had this to say.
She's very community-oriented and a very good people's person. Like, she had patience and she was honest and always looked out for everybody, and especially because she had children. You know, her children were going to grow up like she did in this community.
Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Acting Grand Chief Betsy Kennedy says Bittern will be deeply missed. A councillor is now serving as acting chief until further steps are determined. Heads up to drivers who pass through Portage and Main. Portage Avenue East will be fully closed in both directions for 1 week starting Tuesday. The closure is part of pre-construction work to open that intersection. Let's bring in weather specialist Riley Lachuk now. And Riley, that closure probably going to have a lot of traffic snarls. And one thing that we've been reminding people is with that freeze thaw, quite an issue out there in the mornings.
Yeah, exactly. And we are looking at cool overnights again, Brittany, albeit not as cold tonight as we have gotten over the past few nights. But yeah, we are dipping down once again. 11 degrees in Brandon today, 9 in Winnipeg, exactly on my forecast high from today. Thompson at 4 degrees. In case you're wondering, today was day 25 that we have had a high temperature above seasonal for this time of the year. We've been above seasonal since October 15th. If we look back, we had 26 days before that. Then we had 1 day where we were below seasonal. So we've been above seasonal for an extended period now, and this stretch will continue as we get into the extended forecast as well. Mostly clear, winds pick up tonight. That will keep us warm overnight tonight at 3 degrees, 5, mostly sunny first thing in the morning. South winds 20 gusting to 40, and then we start to see the winds backing off a little bit. 12 degrees in the afternoon, a partly cloudy sky, Brittany, and we're looking at the winds dying off even more as we get closer to the kickoff for the Western Final later in the afternoon. That's coming up.
All right, thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, the blue and gold are looking to go gray. Coming up, everything you need to know ahead of the Western Final this weekend, where the Blue Bombers hope to pave the path to the championship. Stay with us. Winnipeg police say one man is dead and another has been arrested following a stabbing last night. The CBC's Alana Cole now with what we know.
Early this morning, forensic investigators were here on Ellis Avenue. It was around 10 o'clock last night that police say officers responded to a report of a stabbing.
Officers provided the victim with emergency medical attention before he was conveyed to hospital in critical condition and subsequently pronounced deceased.
Police say the victim is a 47-year-old man, and a 42-year-old suspect has been arrested.
All we know so far is that there was an altercation, a physical altercation, and it escalated to the point where one person was stabbed.
Police say at this time they believe the two men knew each other. Others who were in the area are being questioned by police. The homicide unit is investigating. Police are asking anyone with information or video of what happened to report it to them or Crime Stoppers. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
More charges have now been laid against a former teacher. Matthew James Musso was charged last month with multiple voyeurism, child pornography, and sexual exploitation offenses. After his arrest, police say another victim came forward. Police say the 37-year-old now faces additional charges of sexual assault and sexual exploitation in relation to the most recent allegations. Constable Danny McKidden says the victim is now an adult.
While she was a teenager, she was attending an after-school program within the Seven Oaks School Division. Her student support worker was an adult male who groomed her, resulting in a sexually exploitive relationship.
Musso was still teaching as recently as this past spring. He's now back in custody. Police encourage any other possible victims to come forward. Football fans got a special treat at the Winnipeg airport today. The Grey Cup made the rounds on the baggage carousel to greet fans as they arrive ahead of the CFL's West Final tomorrow. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers will take on their rivals, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, at Princess Auto Stadium. It's a big game against the team's biggest rival. Bomber quarterback Zach Claros says that rivalry adds to the excitement for the team and the fans, but once he's on the field, it all fades away.
Those storylines and things like that are exciting leading up to it, for sure, for the fans and all that. But after that first snap, usually, at least for myself, it's who are we playing again? And
it is a great rival, though, and I love it. I live for these games, and I absolutely love playing the Riders, whether it's a regular season game or now a playoff game.
If the Bombers win tomorrow, that will make it 5 consecutive trips to the Grey Cup. Running back Brady Oliveira says that would be a pretty special accomplishment, but he's keeping his focus on the battle at hand.
Big game tomorrow that we really got to focus on, and we got to get through the Riders first to even start talking about that, right? So focus is obviously tomorrow, handling business.
Kickoff is at 5:30 tomorrow. Big game, big rivalry, big day tomorrow, and people are hoping for maybe not big weather. We'd like as little weather to contend with as possible.
Good point. A bit of a breeze in the morning tomorrow, Brittany, but by the time we roll around to game time, we are looking at the winds dying off a bit. But as the sun sets, we'll certainly lose a few degrees off of that 12-degree high for tomorrow afternoon. There is some big weather to talk about, though, in other parts of our province, which we'll get to. First, let's start with that forecast for the West Final. Tomorrow at 5:30, as you heard there, looking at a temperature of 8 at kickoff. South winds 15, could see the odd gust up to 30 through the kickoff part of that tomorrow, but really winds back off to south 10 by the time we reach halftime and 6 degrees. And we are looking at clouds building in as we get through into the day, later part of the day, into the overnight period, Saturday into Sunday. A ridge of high pressure has really kept us sunny and clear today across southern Manitoba. A bit of clouds and some residual flurries pushing off over the Hudson Bay coast. This all part of an area of low pressure that did bring a little bit of snow to parts of far northern Manitoba. Behind that, another area of low pressure bringing another bit of snow to parts of northern Manitoba. And of course, high pressure south of us, which has kept things nice and clear. So that snow and that area of low pressure make its way out by the time we hit the morning hours tomorrow. Starting with a sunny sky tomorrow across Manitoba and into northwestern Ontario, but things change quickly. There are a couple things at play here. First, I want to draw your attention down here to this area of low pressure. This will work its way up as we get later into Saturday. So cloud starts to build in. as we get through the later afternoon into the evening Saturday. Most of this rain stays south of the border. Could see the odd sprinkle in southeastern Manitoba, but it pushes into northwestern Ontario. And then I want to focus your attention into Saskatchewan here, because we have another area of low pressure. This Alberta Clipper system pushing across Saskatchewan as we get through the overnight period Saturday into Sunday. This will bring some snow to the Parklands region. Really temperature dependent, though. The higher elevations, particularly around the Duck Mountains, could get some of that as snow, but mainly a rain event for places like Swan River South, but places like the Pas into Flin Flon, Norway House, Grand Rapids, looking at an accumulating snow from this area of low pressure as we get through Sunday. That pushes out. In Winnipeg, I'm thinking this is mainly a chance of just a couple of sprinkles as we head through the later part of Saturday. A very slim chance, if that. Running some of the forecast snowfall projections here, yeah, we're looking at a general 5 to 10 centimeters, more likely on the 5 centimeter side for places like the Pas. As we look at the rainfall, though, for places like Swan River, we could get 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. And then here's that shot of rain as we get through the weekend into northwestern Ontario, with a general 5 to 10 millimeters coming through the weekend. So forecast tomorrow, 12 degrees, the forecast high, 10 with some patchy fog into the early part of Sunday. And then Brittany, we are backing up to more seasonal conditions with a few scattered showers likely coming Tuesday into Wednesday of next week.
All right. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, after a steep and punishing climb after the end of the pandemic lockdowns, rent prices are starting to fall. The CBC's Nisha Patel has the story.
Stephanie Gunn jumped at the chance to move to a new rental apartment.
Looking at prices, they'd really come down over the past couple months.
Now she's living closer to downtown Toronto, and her monthly rent is $700 cheaper.
I hate moving, but it was a really good decision. And even in paying for movers to move here, it's still a significant savings. Over a year, it's huge.
Average rent in Canada has dropped for the first time in 3 years, down 1.2% for all property types. There were steeper declines in big cities. One-bedroom rentals in Toronto and Vancouver sank about 9%. Calgary and Montreal fell more than 4%.
So we have kind of peaked out on the capacity of consumer to pay.
Experts say demand has declined as the federal government changes immigration policy, and there's more supply available.
We have actually seen across the country a very significant increase in rental construction.
But as people searching for affordable housing move to smaller cities, rents in those markets are still spiking. Last month, apartment rents in Saskatchewan jumped 17%.
We've talked to some not-for-profit housing providers across Saskatoon. They have wait lists in the hundreds because they're offering rents that are affordable and subsidized.
Tenants advocates say despite this slight moderation, prices have escalated too much, too quickly since the pandemic.
You're still going to see people scrambling. You're going to see, 3 people living in a one bedroom, one of them on the couch.
He says rents will need to fall much further for many to feel relief. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
We have much more to come straight ahead. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Leaders expressed outrage today over what Dutch officials called anti-Semitic rioting overnight in Amsterdam. The Dutch Prime Minister says he's horrified and ashamed. Israel's Prime Minister compared it to 1930s anti-Jewish violence. The target was soccer fans from Israel. The CBC's Chris Brown reports.
In Amsterdam Thursday night, football hooliganism and politics resulted in a toxic mess that included attacks on Israelis in the streets. With Israeli fans from the Tel Aviv Maccabi soccer club in for a match against a local Dutch team, tensions were running high long before kickoff. This video shows Israeli fans gathering and lighting flares. Police say Maccabi fans ripped down a Palestinian flag. But it was after the match that the violence got out of hand. Israeli fans chanted anti-Arab slogans. Ole, 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 let the IDF win, we will F the Arabs. But then attackers, and it's not clear precisely who, chased Israeli fans through the city streets as more than 800 Dutch police tried and failed to keep the two groups apart.
One of my son's friends just screamed, "Free Palestine," otherwise they wouldn't let him go. It was a nightmare and it was very well planned.
Police made more than 60 arrests. While the provocations came from both sides, the city's mayor joined a crescendo of voices saying Israeli fans were victimized for being Jewish. Hateful anti-Semitic rioters and criminals attacked and beat up Jewish Israeli visitors to our city last night, said Femke Halsema. Israeli fans returned home Friday, along with the CEO of the Tel Aviv team.
For them to be running into rivers, to be kicked while defenseless on the floor, to be trying to suggest and beg people to believe that they're not Jewish, that's very, very sad times.
Just how much of the violence was driven by anti-Semitism is difficult to untangle, says this expert.
Every season we will see instances where visiting supporters are injured and hospitalised. It's not something we've particularly seen regularly with supporters of Israeli club sides.
In the aftermath, Dutch police have been given stop and search powers as part of additional security measures. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has appointed his campaign manager as White House Chief of Staff. Susie Wiles is the first woman to hold the job. She's a veteran Republican strategist and one of Trump's longest-serving advisors. Wiles is the daughter of sports broadcaster Pat Summerall. Some U.S. companies are already preparing for the Trump presidency. The shoe company Steve Madden said it's cutting in half the number of goods it produces in China. It's to avoid tariffs that Trump has promised to impose. Black people across the United States are reacting with shock and anger after receiving racist text messages. Authorities are now investigating at a tense time following Donald Trump's re-election. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
These messages appeared on phones right across the United States, instructing people by name to report to their nearest plantation, where executive slave catchers would pick them up in a brown van at a specific time and place. For the Black Americans receiving those messages, it's creating anger and confusion.
I was shocked. I was scared. I was nervous. I was upset.
Multiple US agencies, including the FBI and Justice Department, are now involved as they try to find out who was behind the messages that were received across more than a dozen states. The FBI has described the language as offensive and racist. And the exact language varied, but the common theme was telling the recipient they had been selected to pick cotton. In some cases, pre-teens at middle school and teenagers in high school received the texts. It comes in the wake of Tuesday's presidential election, and at a time when many people of colour are feeling anxious about what a second Donald Trump presidency may bring. One former police chief feels the messages were timed to coincide with Trump's win.
The messages are likely coming from somewhere else or overseas to instill fear and divide all of us into some level of hatred.
The National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People says hateful rhetoric from the president-elect is to blame. In a statement, the NAACP said the messages were the unfortunate reality of electing a president who it said had embraced and encouraged hate. The Trump campaign has distanced itself from the messages, saying it had absolutely nothing to do with them. Nick Harper for CBC News, Washington.
It's a story that sounds straight out of a movie. A cryptocurrency CEO kidnapped in the heart of downtown Toronto during the evening rush hour and held on $1 million ransom. The man is safe, but as Chris Glover tells us, the incident is one that some in the industry have worried about for a long time.
During Wednesday's evening rush hour, nearby downtown Toronto's busy University and Richmond intersection, a wealthy crypto CEO was allegedly snatched and stuffed into a car.
I'm Dean Skirka, President and CEO at WonderFi. WonderFi is publicly traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange.
A source close to the investigation says the crypto boss Dean Skirka, CEO of WonderFi, was held for a $1 million ransom. Skirka attempted to make the transfer on his mobile device but was unable to, so the source says he reached out to a family member to complete the transfer electronically. After the ransom was paid, Toronto police confirm he was found quite a ways away here at Centennial Park. In Etobicoke, police say he was uninjured and the investigation into what happened continues. In a statement to CBC Toronto, Dean Skirka confirms he is safe and cooperating with police. The safety and security of all of WonderFi's employees are paramount, Skirka wrote. The company can confirm that client funds and data remain safe and were not impacted by this incident. Searching for security footage that may have captured the incident, we've canvassed every single building in this area, and we can confirm police are doing the same work, requesting footage from this condo building Wednesday evening.
People are starting to see the other side. You start to see some of the positive signals in the market.
Skirka's alleged kidnapping happened the same day WonderFi released its third quarter earnings results. The company reported a 153% increase over third quarter 2023.
I catalog as many of these as I come across, and to my awareness, this particular incident is the 171st such physical attack.
Jameson Lobb tracks worldwide kidnappings involving cryptocurrency. The chief security officer at CASA, a company that focuses on crypto security, says people atop crypto companies tend to be targeted.
Anyone who's high profile in this space, and so of course executives tend to be more public, so that puts them more on the radar for people.
The specifics around what happened to Skirka, whether and how he was specifically targeted, remains part of the ongoing police investigation. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Firefighters in Southern California are battling a major wildfire that started earlier this week. More than 10,000 people have been forced from their homes, and more than 100 structures have already been destroyed. Steve Futterman has the latest.
You can see the home behind me. This is one of 132 homes that have been burned down completely, and another 88 have been severely damaged. We expect those numbers to rise. It's been a very difficult 48 hours for fire crews battling this fire both on the ground and from the air.
Devastation. I lost everything. The home I was in, I rented for 5 years, and it's completely wiped out.
We didn't get any kinds of warning. Right away, we have to evacuate with simple clothes, and I lost my everything, every single piece of my documents, everything, my money, everything.
Today, people who live in this neighborhood were assessing the damage. We spoke to one woman who lives in a home where the fire came within 50 meters.
It's just a lot of anxiety and heartbreak, and you just feel so sad for the families that have lost their homes. And we love our neighborhood, so it's just it's heartbreaking to see it.
This fire captain talked about the difficulty of battling the blaze.
We had from small vegetation on fire to trees to 10, 20, 30 homes well involved all at the same time.
And then there are scenes like this. This home destroyed. Next door, no damage at all. On some streets, it's home after home after home. This is the area that was hardest hit, Old Coach Drive. You see that home? And look down here, look down this street. Home after home after home no longer exists. The Santa Ana winds, which again are the culprit in all this, they're an annual tradition here in Southern California. They have died down to a great extent today, but there's still a slight breeze right now. They come and go. They should stay relatively low for the next 48 hours. Fire crews hope to get the upper hand on the fire during that time. But the Santa Ana winds are going to be back next week. It may not hit Camarillo, but other fire-prone areas are going to have to be on alert for the next month or so. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Camarillo, California.
3 people have now been charged in connection with the death of One Direction singer Liam Payne. Those charged include an alleged drug dealer and a hotel worker who's accused of supplying Payne with cocaine twice during his stay in Buenos Aires. Payne, who was 31, died after falling from the hotel balcony. Investigators say an autopsy showed the pop star had alcohol and cocaine in his system. On this Indigenous Veterans Day, we want to bring you the story from one of our own. CBC will share how he honored his great uncle who died in the First World War. More on that straight ahead. As Manitobans mark Indigenous Veterans Day, we bring you a story from one of our colleagues here at CBC. Videographer Randall Mackenzie spoke with CBC's Emily Brass about how he honored his great-uncle who died in the First World War. Here's part of that conversation.
Well, besides a photo that hung on the walls of his grandfather's house, Winnipegger Randall Mackenzie knew little to nothing about his great-uncle. All he knew was his name, Oswald McCorrister, and that he died young, fighting in the First World War. It wasn't until Randall started looking into online records that he learned Oswald was buried in France, a world away from Peguis First Nation, where he's from. And while Randall hoped to one day visit his great-uncle's grave, he never thought he'd get that chance. But that changed this past summer when he went to Paris for work. Randall's a videographer and one of our colleagues here at CBC Manitoba, and he was over there shooting for the Paris Olympics. He joins us now over Zoom to share more of his story. Good morning, Randall.
Good morning, Emily.
So growing up and seeing that picture of your great-uncle Oswald, what did your grandfather tell you about him?
Grandpa never really said anything about who Oswald was in the portrait there. He basically just kind of kept it simple that it was his brother that had died in the war, and that was about it. We had just seen the picture hanging above, in between the bedroom doors in the hallway above the sewing machine, yeah, he had that portrait there for a long, long time. There's two brothers that went to war. There was actually three brothers, I believe, that went to war because his father's name was William, and then the older brother named William went, and also Oswald. But I believe there was also another brother named Robert that went as well.
And I mean, what's the significance for your family of you going to that grave?
Well, I guess the significance is that I'm like the first one to go and actually see it. You know, there was no picture online of it. There was just a notation of where it was and what section it was. And when you're at the cemetery there, all the headstones are marked, so it's very easy to find. And we just walked over to the right section there and walked down the row, and just second to the last at the end of the row, there was his headstone.
And what did you do to honor him when you found that headstone?
I was really like in a surreal place because I could see my grandpa's name there, my McCorrister, right? And like knowing that, I'm like, boy, I'm thousands of miles away from home, and this is like family here. I left a handful of berries there, strawberries and blueberries and all that, just as an offering to feed the spirit. It's sort of like feeding the fire ceremony, where you would offer offer food to the fire that would feed the spirit of your ancestors there. But I also left a penny as a token that a family member visited the site, and just so that other people coming by will know that, yeah, family was there.
Christian Sinclair is a member of Opaskwayak Cree Nation who served in the military. He co-founded the Manitoba Indigenous Summer Games and was twice elected chief of his community. Sinclair spoke with CBC's Faith Fundal about how his time and service has played a role in the rest of his life.
With the skill sets that you're taught there, leadership, loyalty, commitment to getting the mission accomplished, whatever it may be, and combining that with my traditional upbringing as a Swampy Cree member of Opaskwayak Treaty 5, and I was Métis when I joined the military in 17. I got my treaty right when I joined the military, and I didn't know what being treaty meant, but proud member of Opaskwayak. Combining it with those traditional values, the 7 teachings, with the military discipline, structure, loyalty, integrity, how I've applied that in everything I've done today, which has proven to be very successful for me in any endeavor I've taken on, whether it was running the 2002 North American Indigenous Games, negotiating agreements with hydro with First Nation clients, or in Quebec or in Ontario, and fighting in a different context for the best for my clients, which are First Nations. And ultimately, what drives me is seeing the suffering of children in Somalia, to not want to see that here in Canada, and making sure that what our ancestors negotiated and fought for in our treaty, that's fully acknowledged, honored, and adhered to by the Crown, and fully implemented and honored by our treaty First Nations leadership for the betterment of our seventh generation.
What do you want the community to appreciate or understand about Indigenous Veterans Day?
I think recognizing the fact that per capita we've registered in large numbers, and I learned something recently with Opaskwayak in World War II. 25% of our men went and fought in World War II, which is 1 in every 4 men. And so that just reflects the contribution of our soldiers. And it really comes down to learning and educating yourself about our contribution as First Nations to Canada. Even though we weren't eligible to vote till 1960, our soldiers volunteered in large numbers in Korea in World War II. But it's showing our love and appreciation for our lands and our resources, knowing that it is now known as Canada, but we have a treaty relationship with Canada and the Crown, and we want that fully honored and respected. And there is an unfortunate reality to this day where our World War II First Nation veterans were never offered the same benefits that non-Indigenous veterans were, plots of land, benefits, etc. And the fact that they weren't even allowed to go into legions when they came back to Canada. They could spill the same blood on the ground as brethren in arms on the battlefield, but coming back to Canada, they were not given and afforded that same right.
And it wasn't until 1995 that soldiers were allowed to lay wreaths at the National War Memorial.
Yeah, as a chief of Opaskwayak, I was able to lay a wreath and given that honor by the Assembly of First Nations to do that on behalf of all First Nations in Manitoba. But we've got a ways to go yet as a country, and still fully honor those commitments to our First Nation veterans from World War II. Hopefully Canada can do that in our lifetime. But again, it's about people taking the time to learn, understand, and appreciate that we don't take our freedom for granted. And as First Nations, we're doing our part to ensure the freedom is always there and the quality of life for our people in Canada, First Nation or not.
Some incredible history and stories shared by both of those gentlemen. And of course, Remembrance Day happening on Monday. Lots of ceremonies going to be taking place around the city. Lots of people looking at that weather forecast, because no snow this year, so that's bonus. But what's the weekend going to look like for them?
The weekend, at least here in southern Manitoba, looking quite nice. Into Monday, we are looking at a bit of a cooler day as we start to turn the page seasonally. So I'll get into that. Let's start with your dog walking forecast for the weekend. First off, today we have Cooper. Thank you, Alan and Denise, for sending this very cute picture in. Talkback at cbc.ca is where you can send your photos into. And we're looking at another above seasonal day really across much of southern Manitoba tomorrow. So 8 o'clock in the morning, 5 degrees. Sunrise is just after 7:30 now, getting up to 12 through the afternoon. We do start to see a little bit of cloud building in as we get into the afternoon hours, and more like mostly cloudy with some clear breaks by the time we hit the evening, and 10 degrees. Sun setting at 4:51 in the afternoon. So tonight, at least, we do have mostly clear skies, a little bit of cloud hanging around out there, but for the most part, clear skies through the overnight period tonight, and staying above zero. This is because we'll have some fairly gusty south winds really pushing in some of that warm southerly air into southern Manitoba. So even though we're looking at clear skies tonight, temperatures really not dropping like we have seen over the past few nights here. So 4 degrees in Dauphin, 1s through Brandon, Melita, Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, looking at lows of 3 degrees overnight tonight. Northern Manitoba, a little bit of cloud starts to build in ahead of that next area of low pressure, 1 degree in Lynn Lake, Thompson, Gillam, Shamattawa, still a few more centimeters of snow, maybe some rain to come yet through the overnight period. Into your Saturday, we see that cloud and a couple lingering showers still pushing out first thing in the morning. And then by noon, we really clear out nicely back to a mix of sun and clouds for the afternoon for northern Manitoba. So 6s and 7s for Flin Flon and the Paw, 6 for Norway House as well tomorrow afternoon, and a mainly sunny day for southern Manitoba for your Saturday. We start to get a little bit of cloud building in through the late afternoon, but temperatures some 10, 11, 12 degrees above seasonal for this time of the year. 12 in Portage, 9s for Kenora and Dryden. Into Sunday, this is when things get interesting. We do have a risk of some patchy fog across southern Manitoba first thing in the morning on Sunday, and then we get that rain and snow starting through the Parkland region. Winnipeg looking at a high of 10 on Sunday. Brittany, I will have your full 7-day forecast when I come back.
All right. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Still ahead, color and kindness, how a retired teacher helped brighten the year for some young budding artists in our daily lift. Plus, Riley's back with our last check on your forecast. Stay with us.
We'll talk about Remembrance Day. We'll skip ahead to Monday here because I know a lot of folks taking in outdoor ceremonies across our province as we get into the day on Monday. So we're looking at a temperature in Winnipeg of 4 degrees, light winds north at 10 as those ceremonies are getting underway, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. Saturday, looking at a high of 12 in Winnipeg for the West Final, looking at a temperature of about 8 at kickoff. Sunday, 10 degrees with some patchy fog in the morning, and then we turn the page back to single-digit temperatures. Our next chance for some precipitation comes Tuesday, high of 6 degrees, and then 4s and 3s as we get into the later part of next weekend. Watch for those winds next Wednesday. Could see some gusting up to 50 kilometers an hour. Our next story is one about color and kindness. A retired teacher in Windsor, Ontario, heard some students didn't have some basic supplies at their school, like crayons.
So she set off on a mission, and it's safe to say it was a colorful success. Dale Molnar has our daily lift.
Okay, so remember, it's Remembrance Day coming up, right? So we are coloring this page as a Remembrance Day tribute to our veterans.
The kindergarten kids at St. James Elementary School in the West End now have thousands of new crayons to color with. All thanks to the efforts of Rosemary Marintet, a former teacher at the school, who found out some of the kids didn't have the supplies.
I went to Staples and I grabbed a container of pencils, and then I asked to speak to the manager, Blanca, and I said, could you give me a discount on the pencils, and explain it was for St. James, that it was a very needy school.
But not only did the store cover the cost of the pencils, they threw in some crayons for free too. 31,000 of them.
Come on in. Oh, wow, look at this. Next week is World Kindness Day, so our grade 8 leaders, along with this class today, we're making kindness cards to share with the community and to share with our school community next week. So in a way, the donation was so kind for us that we get to pay it forward. Boys and girls, let's do our impact cheer. 1, 2, 3.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
I love it because a good teacher can change your life.
Yes, one act of kindness and 31,000 crayons later.
I love it. I still remember those teachers that made an impact. Ms. Murdy,
Yes.
Mr. C, and one of my counselors, Paul, in university. So
Very nice.
keep them in your mind. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you back here next week.
See you Monday.